Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar Magic the Gathering video. In this one, this is going to be the first of a couple of videos I'm going to be doing, going through all of the cards in the Avatar Magic the Gathering set. This first one is going to be mostly focused on all of the white cards from the main TLA set, but I'll also be covering like some of the colourless cards right at the start. I'm going through them basically in set number order, so TLA 001 up to like 50 something, which is where the white cards come to an end. The next video will be on blue, then black, red, green, multicolor, and so on, just to kind of go through them. My approach is going to be to tackle this as a Avatar fan first, kind of Magic fan second, doing it more from a beginner point of view for Avatar fans getting into Magic through the set, pointing out particularly flavorful cards, cool references in terms of what they chose to actually depict as cards, explaining some references when it's maybe a little bit more subtle, like some of the minor characters, but also trying to point out what cards are actually good, especially ahead of like pre-releases coming up and stuff like that. So again, focused on more of a beginner kind of type thing. Maybe if you're more into Magic, you might get some information out of the Avatar info that I have, but that's just the approach that I'm going to take. So if you want to kind of take a full look at the card list yourself, I'll have the cards as I discuss them up on screen. I will link the official Magic card image gallery, which is now fully complete for the Avatar set, but we'll go through it here. So we'll start off with card number 1, and that is Aang's Journey. It is 2 mana for a sorcery lesson. It is a common. It's got Kicker 2, and then search your library for a basic land card. If the spell was kicked, search for a library and a shrine card, put them in your hand, then shuffle, and you gain 2 life. So this card has kind of 2 different kind of modes, basically. If you just play it for 2, you get to search for a basic land and gain 2 life. If you pay the kicker cost as well, so for 4 mana, you get the land, the 2 life, and a shrine if you happen to be playing shrines in your deck. There's not too many of them. In like limited, maybe you might not be. Like you might only have 1 shrine in your deck. Maybe you want to pay the extra 2, but I think primarily this is there to help you out if you are playing a multicolor deck. Most of your decks, probably in limited and stuff like that, will be maybe 2 color, but if you maybe happen to have 3 or 4 colors, searching for a basic land of a specific type might be something that you want to do. It's not a super powerful card, but it's nice. It's a little bit flexible there, and it could be useful if that's what you want. The flavor here is obviously this is meant to be from quite early on in the series, the kind of formation to a certain degree of Team Avatar, starting the journey here, heading towards the Southern Air Temple is my guess. Just the very, very beginning of the journey, or maybe it's just after the Southern Air Temple. But yeah, that's cool. The other thing about this card is that it is a lesson. For the most part, the cards with lessons, the card itself being a lesson doesn't really mean all that much. It's mostly if a card in its effect text mentions lessons, then lesson cards matter. We will get to that shortly. The second card is Energy Bending. It is 2 mana, also for an instant lesson. It's an uncommon. Lands you control gain all basic land types until end of turn and draw a card. So a pretty cool effect there, where basically it means all of your lands are now plains, forests, mountains, islands, and swamps. It just means that every individual one of your lands is now capable of tapping for any color of mana, just until end of turn. You still have the same amount of mana, it's just that it's very flexible in the way you can actually use it, and you do get to draw a card. So it's pretty nice, but again, it's mostly there to help facilitate, I think, multicolor decks overall. So especially if you are playing above 2 colors, this might be something you want. But also, you know, 2 mana to get the card draw and a little bit of flexibility is kind of nice. And in the moments, it's interesting. We go from a very early show moment to card number 2 is like right at the end of the show. Aang energy bending Ozai to take his bending away. And you see the clash of their energies here. Because to bend another's energy, your own spirit must be unbendable. You can't allow yourself to be bent, so you can actually bend another person. It's an interesting dynamic. referencing, of course, the fact that before proper bending, the line turtles can just energy bend. They are the ones who kind of gave humans bending in the first place, and it's a cool kind of lore reveal that we got right at the end of Avatar that they kind of expanded upon as we go into Korra with the beginnings episode. So there's some fun lore surrounding some of this stuff, but it's pretty nice. The third and final kind of colorless card here is Zuko's Exile. It's 5 mana for a common instant lesson. Exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Its controller creates a clue token. So it is a removal spell here. You just get to exile an artifact, creature, or enchantment. So it's kind of flexible here, being able to target artifacts or enchantments as well as the creature. But you do give your opponent, if you target your opponent's stuff, a clue token. Now, the clue token is useful. You can see here it's an artifact that has 2 sacrifice, draw a card. So you kind of give them a potential card draw in the future, but you are getting rid of something. As a colorless card, it's maybe a little bit overcosted because it's so kind of generic, and it is quite broad. But it is a useful card, I think, if you need some removal in your deck. And it's obviously flavorful with the idea of Zuko's Exile is effectively the hunt for the Avatar, and he needs to find clues initially to kind of go on the Avatar's trail. Now, this is mostly kind of happened prior to the series starting, but it's that kind of idea there. It's kind of fun. And the art is super cool, kind of depicting, Zuko overlooking the kind of like world on his journey. It's kind of cool. But we move into white at last with the 4th card. Aang, the Last Airbender. 3 and white for a 3/2 human avatar ally. It's an uncommon. There's a bunch of different Aang cards in the set. This is the mono white Aang. You'll note that basically most of the other ones, apart excluding Jumpstart, one color gets added on as he gains elements. So we'll see lots of Aangs in the multicolor section video when we get there. But for now, this is early series Aang with only airbending. He has flying. When he enters, airbend up to 1 other target non-land permanent, and whenever you cast a lesson spell, Aang gains lifelink until end of turn. So 3/2 flyer for 4 is pretty nice. The fact that he comes in and airbends something, and note the wording on airbending. Airbending is exile whatever is targeted. When it's exiled, its owner may cast it for 2 rather than its mana cost. So it's not a permanent exile, it's this kind of more flexible exile where if you do it to your opponent's stuff, you kind of more slow them down. They can get it back later for 2, but it's still gotten rid of for a short amount of time. But interestingly with airbending, they do kind of want you to target your own stuff. A lot of the cards will specify it has to be your own stuff. And the reason you want to do that is to try and take advantage of cards that have enter the battlefield effect. Typically, they will only trigger once because the card comes onto the field, it triggers, and then they leave the field, and potentially it might not come back. Airbending is a way to kind of do that and get that creature back onto the field. It enters again, and you get that effect again. That's sort of the intent behind airbending in that sense. There's also, like, depending on the timing of when you do it, it's a way to protect your own creatures so they're not on the board while your opponents do things. So there's lots of options with a flexible ability like this. You just need to note every time airbending is mentioned, what it specifies you can actually target, what type of card, and if it's you or your opponent it's asking, or both. Or one or the other. So in this case, it's 1 target non-land permanent. So it's you or your opponent. It just has to be a permanent that's not a land. That's cool. The second effect is very interesting because we obviously went over 3 lessons with the first 3 cards. This is where it actually begins to matter. Whenever you cast a lesson, Aang gains lifelink until end of turn. So, he just depends on, like, hey, if you want lifelink, you got to play some lessons in the deck. And it's just an extra added bonus every time you do that. Lifelink just means that when Aang deals damage in combat, you gain that much life. He'll deal 3 damage, you gain 3 life, or depending on how it works, you gain that amount. It's pretty nice here. It's a fun Aang, I wouldn't say crazy powerful, but also just a useful card. And again, Aang, because he has an enter the battlefield ability, you might want to use other cards to airbend Aang, so you can bring him back later to airbend something else, and you can have some cool, fun things as you kind of trigger lots of enter the battlefield effects. Next, Aang's Iceberg, 2 and a white for an enchantment. It's a rare. It's got flash. That just means that enchantments, typically you have to cast at like kind of sorcery speed. Flash means you can cast it at instant speed, so you can actually cast this on your opponent's turn, which is useful because what the card does, when this enchantment enters, exile up to one other target non-land permanent until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. It also has Waterbend 3, sacrifice this enchantment. If you do, scry 2. So the idea here is that it's a white removal spell. You exile one of your opponent's creatures or something like that they have in the field. You trap them in ice. Now, they can get that thing back if they somehow destroy the card Aang's Iceberg, because until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. So if they get rid of it, they get their thing back. And then this card also has a built-in way to do that yourself through waterbending. Now, the intent here, of course, is that you probably don't want to use the waterbending effect if you've targeted something on your opponent's field. But if you've targeted something on your own field, which you might want to do, you probably will want to waterbend at some point to get it out. You also get the Scry 2, which means you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck. With each of those cards, you get to decide to put it on the top or the bottom of your deck. It's a cool effect. So yeah, this is a bit kind of like airbending to a certain degree with what's happening here, because the card is exiled by this thing, and when it's destroyed, it comes back onto the field. So it's another way to actually re-trigger enter the battlefield effects. It's very flavorful, white card in waterbending, referencing the fact that Katara broke Aang out of the ice. I think it's cool. The fact that you can do it at instant speed to kind of mess up combat as well, I think is quite clever to either protect one of your things or take out one of your opponent's things is quite good. This also does have an alternate art, as you can see here. It's got Aang's Iceberg elemental frame art. Very cool. The elemental frames, the deal with them is that you can get them in play booster packs and collector booster packs. They're available in foil and non-foil. They're just very rare out of play booster packs, whereas they're a little bit more common in collector boosters, but still not like guaranteed. So proper alternate art here. Very cool. I like the more zoomed in look at what's actually in the iceberg, but I still actually like the default art as well. A quick note on maybe the other cards as well, just to highlight that you can get these in the normal non-foil default version, but you can also get them in foil. I'll point out when we do have proper alternate arts, as we will have here. Airbender Ascension has an extended art card. You can see that the difference is relatively subtle here. It's not a true alternate art because the art piece is actually the same. It's just that the borders are gone on the sides and it extends a little bit down, but not all the way down. Interestingly, extended arts are not available in play boosters, only in collector booster packs. So that's a bit of an interesting decision. But anyway, next card here is Airbender Ascension. It's 2 mana for a rare enchantment. When it enters, airbend up to 1 target creature. So that's your field or your opponent's field. Whenever a creature you control enters, put a quest counter on this enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if this enchantment has 4 or more quest counters on it, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So you can see the kind of play pattern here is just you want to play creatures, you want creatures to enter the battlefield, and you will gain quest counters. When you get 4, you are then able to basically have an effect that effectively re-triggers enter the battlefield effect. So it's playing into that's what airbending wants to do when you target your own things. Getting this, in a way, ultimate effect here of you don't even have to pay for it to re-enter the battlefield. If you get up to 4 quest counters, you just get to exile and it's immediately back. So if you do that on, for instance, say the Aang, you get to immediately re-trigger the airbending effect here, or various other cards as well. Like you could, I think you get to do it here. You could actually maybe switch the target of, I think, Aang's Iceberg. I believe that's how that could work. That sort of thing. And then again, with the first effect, you can choose to do that immediately on one of your own things and get the entering kind of going as well, because you can then just pay the 2 to get that creature back, and then you get your first kind of quest counter. or you can just do it to get rid of one of your opponent's things as well. That's up to you about kind of what exactly you do, but it's a card that very clearly tells you that that is what airbending is trying to do, is like you want to re-trigger effects. So that is a cool card, and I think there is an Ascension card for all of the elements that kind of really kind of takes that bending discipline to a certain level, highlighting what it can do. So very cool. And then, yeah, the depiction of this art here is I think interesting. I think it's meant to be kind of maybe pre-war, back in the good times when the air nomads are still around, just because Aang and Appa seem so happy here near one of the air temples. So that's that. Next card is Airbender's Reversal. It is a 1 and a white for an instant. It's a lesson. It's an uncommon. You get to choose one of these two effects. You can either destroy target attacking creature or airbend a target creature you control. So there's an airbend card that specifies it has to be you, and it fits the card. The thematic theme here is that this is representing the air nomad fighting style, which is typically to avoid and evade, be relatively defensive in fights. So yeah, you wait for your opponent to attack and then you kind of counter, or you airbend yourself to move out of the way, is sort of what it's getting across here. Very flavorful, and that's very represented by Aang and Zuko's early fights, where you really saw that kind of martial arts difference between air and firebending. So cool card. 2 mana instant speed. You can get rid of something or mess up combat by getting rid of one of your things. It's cool, it's flexible, it's nice, not crazy powerful, but you know, it's useful. Next, we have Airbending Lesson, and there is a lesson for all the different bending disciplines, so Firebending Lesson and so on. 3 mana for an instant lesson. It's a common. Airbend target non-land permanent, either side of the board, and draw a card. Pretty nice. If you want airbending, here's one of the most simple applications of it here. And getting a card draw is nice as well. This is probably a card you would want to play in any deck running white. I'd also like this card, especially because it's one of the few cards that does feature Monk Gyatso on it. Interestingly, he has a creature card in the Jumpstart set, but he doesn't have a creature card in the main set. I think it's only one of the few weaknesses, I would say, of white as a color identity in the main set, is that they seem to very much make a decision to, because he's a character from the past, not feature him as a proper creature card here. I would have, in Monk Gyatso's case specifically, just went ahead with a creature, just because there are so few airbenders that you can do it. Like, most of the airbending effects are on Aang creatures, Appa creatures, and then sorceries and instants that like relate to Aang and Appa. So I think having another creature with airbending like a Gyatso would have been a cool way to just add a little bit more variety, but I do appreciate that he's at least featured on this card here. So very nice. Next, we move on to Appa Loyal Sky Bison, 4 white, so 6 mana for a 4/4 Bison ally legendary creature. It's an uncommon with flying. When Appa enters or attacks, choose one. Target creature you control gains flying until end of turn, or airbend another target non-land permanent you control. So another example of airbending specifically targeting you, so wanting you to recast it later to either protect it or just re-trigger effects like I've been saying, but also it's just supporting the flying aspect of a lot of white cards, wanting to put your stuff up in the air, and Appa helped that happen. So his you get one of those two effects when he enters, but then also when he attacks. So you also have to remember that, like, you might want to actually use airbending from another effect on Appa, and that's a way to quickly maybe trigger this effect multiple times if you really want to. So yeah, when he enters, you maybe want to give something flying. Maybe on a lot of the attacks, you might want to do either or. There's options. I like the flexibility of it. It's pretty nice for the uncommon Appa here. The mythic rare Appa is Appa Steadfast Guardian, so 2 white, so 4 mana for a 3/4 mythic rare Bison ally. It's got flash and flying. That just means that flash means that you can play it on your opponent's turn. So you can cast Appa. So his enter the battlefield effect, which we'll get to just now, can actually happen on your opponent's turn as well, or during combat. When Appa enters, airbend any number of target non-land permanents you control. So again, it specifies you, and it actually specifies that they want you to airbend multiple of your things as well. So what's going on here? Like that's a lot of mana to pay to get this back. So is there a benefit to this? Whenever you cast a spell from exile, create a 1/1 white ally creature token. When you pay the 2 for airbending, you are casting a card from exile. So when you get your stuff back, you get your creature token. So that's the kind of benefit of it. And then the idea here is as well, you want to flash this creature in to take your stuff off the board at an advantageous time for you. So for instance, say your opponent goes all in with a big attack. You're in danger. You have to block with everything. You use your entire board to block their board, but you know that the result of this is that, like, okay, I'm still alive, but I've lost all my creatures to these desperate blocks I had to make. You can flash in Appa, and after you declare your blockers, but before the damage properly happens, Appa enters the battlefield. You now airbend all your things out of the way. They are still considered to have blocked those attacks, but they've left the battlefield before they're assigned damage, so they're saved, but you don't take any damage. And then you bring them back next turn, but now you also have a bunch of ally creature tokens, assuming you have enough mana to do that, obviously. And the idea is, like, you saved yourself, and then you come back, and you potentially re-trigger a bunch of enter the battlefield effects that might airbend your opponent's stuff and really flip the match around. That's what you're trying to do here. It's Appa's Steadfast Guardian because he protects your things and then brings them back with reinforcements. It's a very cool, flavorful card representing kind of what Appa is doing during the Day of Black Sun battle in his armor, going all around the battlefield. Super fun card. It's maybe not the most absolutely crazy powerful effect, but like there will be moments where this really goes off and goes off kind of hard. So very cool card. This one has an alternate art. This is a field note version of this card. So it's a mythic rare field note. Again, you can get it in collector boosters, but you can also get it in play boosters. It's just going to be very rare. This style of art just depicts the card kind of more from maybe like an anthropologist or a zoologist kind of point of view, pointing out specific features of the animal, like the shape of the eyes, how big the tongue is, the shape of the feet. It's cool that they feature these for some of the animals and also some of the technology in Avatar. It's a cool looking alt art. Next is Avatar Enthusiasts. 2 and a white for a common human peasant ally. It's a 2/2. It's Foamy Mouth Guy, another meme kind of character from the show, from Kyoshi Island. And it's actually a pretty nice card. It's a 2/2, but whenever another ally you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So you need to keep track of course, on all your creatures. How many of them are allies? When you cast them, is it an ally entering the battlefield? This can actually begin to get quite big. All but like 2 or 3 of the white creatures in the set are allies. So this is going to trigger a lot. And then remember, a lot of these cards are also going to create 1/1 white ally tokens, which are allies entering as well. So this is one of those basic cards that you can build a bit of a strategy around of, like, if this thing just continues to get bigger and bigger, it will eventually threaten your opponent and force them to have to deal with it, while leaving room for your actual cards with like proper effects to kind of go off. It's a nice role player card that you do want in your deck to just constantly trigger, threaten your opponent with just, it's gonna get bigger, do you want to deal with it? And that's fun. Next, Avatar's Wrath. 2 white for a rare sorcery. Choose up to 1 target creature, then airbend all other creatures. Until your next turn, your opponent can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Exile Avatar's Wrath. So you have to immediately exile this when you play it. It doesn't go to the graveyard, but it basically clears the board. It airbends everything except you can choose 1 creature to keep on the board and airbend everything else. And then realistically, that's what you want to do. You choose your best thing. Everything else gets airbent away. And your opponent specifically cannot cast their spells that are airbent away until your next turn. So you have that kind of time gap where you're aware, okay, those creatures are not coming back until this moment. I have a little bit of time to actually do stuff now that I've kind of cleared the board. And then you can be fully prepared for this as well, that even though maybe you might lose a couple of creatures on your board because you can only save one creature with the effect, you can immediately recast some of your creatures from airbending because you're not restricted like your opponent is. So you can really change the course of battle with this card as well. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to maybe point out that like you probably want a more permanent Wrath card that truly destroys or exiles everything on the board. But I think this actually is quite nice because it's not crazy priced for effectively a board wipe, only 4 mana. And it does give you time. I actually think this is actually quite strong as well, and I like the airbending and how it works and how it asks you to think about if you want to use it on your opponent or yourself, and you can gain benefits either way. It's pretty cool. This one also has an alternate art, extended art, again only in collector boosters. Visually, this is an interesting card because it seems to maybe be more depicting Aang in the Avatar state, maybe during the Sandbender moment when he finds out that Appa was muzzled and taken away. But the outfit that Aang is in is basically Aang from the Book 3 finale, the series finale. So it's an interesting kind of visual kind of thing overall. I guess it's more meant to just broadly visually represent just the Avatar, the power of the Avatar when they are in the Avatar state, rather than a super specific moment. But still, very, very cool card here with Avatar's Wrath. Next up, we have Compassionate Healer. This is 1 and a white for a common human cleric ally. It's a 2/2. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, you gain a life and you scry 1. It's basic, but actually it's a kind of cool thing because it's effectively a Yagoda card. So this is the master healer who trained Katara at healing when she went to the north. And they kind of do this with some of the more minor characters, where instead of giving them a named card and making them kind of like a legendary creature, they just make them a normal creature and describe kind of what they are rather than giving them their name. I think that's a relatively fine way to do it, to not like overly kind of in a way burden the maybe Magic players who don't know Avatar with here's a million named characters when it's like, oh, it's the healer. Okay, that's fine. But yeah, this is a cool card because it's in white, but it kind of is leaning towards kind of white blue because it's kind of asking you to do a little bit of water bending. Because again, the way water bending works is that you can use your creatures and artifacts by tapping them to help pay for those costs. So that's one way to make Compassionate Healer tapped, is by facilitating her with another water bending effect. Obviously you can just attack, but she's not a super good attacker. So I think it's a nice enough card. If you want the life gain, the Scry 1 is kind of nice, but I think it's mostly there to be like a support character if you maybe lean more towards waterbending, because there's only a few waterbending cards in white, but it is nice and it's cool that there is a Yagoda card. Next, Curious Farm Animals, 1 mana for a common 1/1. Creature, boar, elk, bird, ox. Whenever this creature dies, you gain 3 life, and you can make it die by paying 2 and sacrificing it to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. I like that it actually has something going on there. It's not just the life gain. You can destroy an artifact or enchantment, which can be useful sometimes. Maybe more of a sideboard card that you add in if your opponent has a lot of them. But nice. When you do it, you get to gain the 3 life and destroy something. And it's a fun, flavorful card because the reason there's so many animals there is Avatar's hybrid animals, but it's typically 2. That's because it's multiple hybrid animals. So you can see there's the chicken pig, the deer pig, and the cow pig are all pictured on this card, which is kind of fun to see all the different hybrid pigs. Next, Destined Confrontation, 2 white for an uncommon sorcery. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, then sacrifices all other creatures they control. So this one keeps all as many basically small creatures on the board as they want, but it gets rid of the higher power creatures. So obviously if you build your deck in a very specific way where it doesn't have a lot of high power creatures, this will affect your opponent much more than you. The timing also at which you use this card can make it so that it really does only affect your opponent. You want this to be you not sacrificing anything or very few creatures and your opponent sacrificing a lot. But still, cool moment here. I guess it's white more so because it does feature Zuko towards the end of the series during the last Agni Kai. Cool thing just to get across the idea that like yeah, you get rid of a lot of the creatures, and it's just down to the final kind of two in a way to fight the battle. Cool stuff. Next, Earth Kingdom Jailer, 3 mana, so 2 and a white for an uncommon 3/3 human soldier ally. When this creature enters, exile up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment an opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater until this creature leaves the battlefield. So it's kind of like the Ang's Iceberg in that, like, as long as this is on the field, that thing remains exiled, but they can defeat this to get it back. But it's still getting rid of an artifact, creature, or enchantment. It has to be mana value 3 or greater, but that's kind of nice. It gets rid of one of their bigger, more notable things. So that's actually quite useful, and it is just an uncommon. I think that's actually a pretty good uncommon. Note again, it is an ally as well, so that will be useful in your ally-focused deck. This is also an ally. Earth Kingdom Protectors, 1 mana for an uncommon 1/1 human soldier ally. It's got vigilance. That just means when it attacks, it doesn't untap, so it stays active to attack and block, basically. You can sacrifice this creature. Another target ally you control gains indestructible until end of turn. That effect is nice because it just allows you to slightly shift combat in your favor. You can make an attack a little bit more comfortable for yourself. You can make a block a lot more comfortable for yourself. You can kind of surprise someone a little bit by having this on the field, or even just the threat of being able to make something indestructible and surprise them can have an effect. Maybe not super amazing, but solid utility effect. Next, enter the Avatar state. It's a 1 mana instant lesson. It's an uncommon. Until end of turn, target creature you control becomes an avatar in addition to its other types. It gains flying, first strike, lifelink, and hexproof. So pretty crazy card here. Adding the avatar type doesn't really mean all that much. There are a few cards in the set that relate to that, but I don't think it's going to come up all that much unless you super construct a deck that uses all those cards that relate to avatars quite well. The significance here is that it gains flying, first strike, lifelink, and hexproof. So hexproof means you can counter a targeting spell, so you can save something for 1 mana with this just with the hexproof. And then the other effects are more combat focused to allow you to suddenly fly over an attack theoretically, get the first strike damage through, deal damage and gain some life. It's useful overall. Nothing crazy, but like, yeah, that's a nice combat trick. Next is Fancy Footwork, also an instant lesson, 2 and a white for an uncommon. Untap 1 or 2 target creatures. They each gain +2/+2 until end of turn. So again, another combat trick here. +2/+2 is actually quite nice for 3, and you're targeting 2 creatures. And you do get to untap them as well. So that allows you to do a couple of things that link quite well in with, I'd say especially waterbending and earthbending. It allows you to use your lands that have been turned into creatures for their mana, then untap them and still attack with them. And then it also allows you to use a waterbending effect where you use a creature to help pay for a cost and still attack with it. Plus, you know, it's just a good defensive card. You could have attacked last turn and you could use this instant to suddenly reactivate 2 blockers that are now much bigger. Very, very useful and flexible card. And the art is so cool on this one. It's the Katango, Aang and Katara's dance from the headband from early book 3. Nice that they gave this a card. I really like it. So there's that. Next is Gather the White Lotus, 4 and a white for a uncommon sorcery. Create a 1/1 white ally creature token for each planes you control, scry 2. So again, you get to stack your deck a little bit in your favor, get the cards that you want realistically, and then yeah, bunch of tokens based on how many planes you control. So if you're mono white, you're at least getting 5, I guess here, and then even if you're maybe playing a double color deck, by the time you're casting this card, you're getting at least 3, I would guess. Again, the timing on this one is a big deal. If like you want to wait probably until there's at least 3 or 4 of them coming into play to get the full value, because it does cost 5. And if you can play it much later on in the game, it can really overload the board theoretically, especially if you have a way to maybe boost the power of these as well, which there will be cards we'll get to. But still, very nice. The card itself depicts, I guess, the character Feng, who Iroh kind of comes into contact with. This is effectively the way they introduce the Order of the White Lotus, and what it actually is by revealing Iroh as part of this organization by him having this game with this guy. So it's kind of cool. Next is Glider Kids, which is a more basic card, but you can see here, 3 mana for a 2/3 human pilot ally with flying, and you scry 1 when you enter. Solid. The stats are quite nice. A 2/3 for 3 that can fly is solid, and you want flyers in this deck, so that's very nice. And next is Glider Staff, 2 and a white for an artifact equipment. When it enters, you get to airbend a target creature. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has flying, and it has an equip cost of 2. So it is cool because it has the immediate effect of comes in, airbend something, and again, that can be your stuff or your opponent's stuff. Also note, as a target for airbending, another airbending effect, if you airbend Glider Staff and then bring it back in, you trigger its enter the battlefield ability as well. So for the ones that mention airbending like just a permanent and not a creature, that you can actually get advantage from this as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah, +1/+1 and flying, that's what you want to do in white, make more flyers. Actually getting stuff equipped maybe quickly is a little bit kind of slow because you have to pay the 3 and then you pay the 2. But at least you get the airbending when it does enter, which is nice as well. Next is Hakoda Selfless Commander. 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/5 human warrior ally. It's a rare, so you know it's going to be pretty good because this is Sokka and Katara's father here, leading the Day of Black Sun invasion. Vigilance. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Okay. You may cast ally spells from the top of your library. You do have to pay for them, but it does mean that if that first card that you can look at any time is an ally, it's considered to basically be in your hand and you can just play it. So it helps you to kind of get to more allies. He has vigilance, he's got pretty good stats, and then he also has Sacrifice Hakoda. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain indestructible until end of turn. So a very defensive ability here, giving them big toughness, making them indestructible as well. So that is a cool way to add instant speed, I suppose. Counter some sort of big spell your opponent puts down with the indestructible, and then really make combat messy for your opponent as well. So just a really strong kind of defensive kind of mode that can make combat, I think, go in your favor. Of like, even if you use this like offensively, if you've got a big board, the confidence you have to just attack in because everything has indestructible is pretty good. So it's just about the timing of when do you sacrifice Hakoda, because he's actually a pretty good creature, and you have to make sure the rest of your board is actually like good enough without him. So that's that. Hakoda can also come as an extended art, which again only comes in collector boosters. So yeah, you can see here the extended art is just, you see a bit more of the pillars primarily, but it's still cool that it is there. Next up, we have Invasion Reinforcements. 2 mana for a 1/1 human warrior ally, uncommon. It has flash, and when it enters, you create an ally creature token. So you still get your kind of 2 power, 2 toughness for 2, just across 2 creatures. And the fact that it has flash can be useful as well. So basic card. I think the main thing to actually talk about this is just the idea of like this kind of almost addition, kind of like new thing that we almost assumed happened in the background, but we never really saw in the show, of just that, oh yeah, some of the female waterbenders from the north kind of joined the kind of invasion force. We primarily focused on like the Foggy Swamp tribe. Most of the water tribe forces that we saw were Hakoda's kind of non-bender southern warriors, but the idea that, yeah, I guess some of the people that kind of Katara inspired up in the north did join the battle. We just didn't kind of see them in the background, and that's a kind of cool extra kind of detail that we didn't really know about. Zhongzhong's Deserters, 2 mana for a 1/2 human rebel ally. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Just solid, doing what white wants to do. You have your tokens, you have your other cards, you boost up something pretty nice. You can see what you're trying to do. You're kind of trying to go wide and make your small things kind of as big as possible. Very cool. Next, Kyoshi Warriors, 4 mana for a common 3/3. and when it enters, you get a 1/1 ally creature token. So similar to some of the other cards of just like, you still get your 4 toughness, it's just split across 2 different creatures here. This one doesn't have flash, but it's the Kyoshi Warrior card. It's really, really cool. Love the art. Next, a mythic rare, Legend of Yang Chen. It's an enchantment saga, and then the idea of these cards is that they are double-sided, so it transforms into a creature at the end of the saga. So the Legend of Yang Chen is 5 mana to start the saga. It starts off with, starting with you, each player chooses up to 1 permanent with mana value 3 or greater from among permanents your opponent control. Exile those permanents. This is a weird effect because it works kind of very differently in one-on-one Magic versus, say, 4-player Commander Magic. Because one-on-one, this effect effectively just reads, you get to choose a permanent your opponent controls with 3 or greater, and they exile it. And then your opponent still has to choose, they can't choose you. It's your opponents, the person who played the card. It's not like each player chooses one of their opponent's things. It has to be opponents of you. So your opponent has to either choose their own stuff because they don't have any other opponent that's not you. In Commander, it's a much more complicated effect because you have to choose among your 3 opponents who you're going to choose and then what permanent is going to be destroyed. But then player 2 gets to choose from player 3 and 4 who they're going to target, and so on. And it's a little bit more of a kind of political effect, just with the effect it would have on a multiplayer board. I think leaning into the story stuff for Yang Chen with her constant negotiations with spirits and humans over various issues, and how challenging sometimes a lot of that was. Interestingly with Yang Chen as well, because she in the story never really talks about any events from her life, she just gives Aang advice from the perspective of also being an air nomad avatar. They have to reference the other material on her card to actually give you a sense for what she had to deal with. So this character here in the background is the spirit General Old Iron, who is covered first in the Rift comic series, but also a little bit of detail in both of her novels, kind of goes into detail on the on Old Iron. So The Dawn of Yang Chen and The Legacy of Yang Chen, if you want more information on this character. Great books, and also the comic I think is quite good as well. The second stage of the saga is you may have a target opponent draw 3 cards if you do draw 3 cards. So it's all about like, do I want to give my opponent 3 cards? If I do, I get 3 cards as well, or otherwise this is sort of like do nothing. And wait for phase 3 where you get to transform it into Avatar Yang Chen. I like it because it's just like making tough decisions, political kind of diplomatic negotiations almost. That's what this card is sort of about. But then you eventually get to Avatar Yang Chen. 4/5 creature with flying. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, airbend up to 1 target non-land permanent. So it's a way to each turn constantly trigger airbending, which is nice. It's a powerful effect, so it's cool that you can make it happen each turn. And also it's cool that like airbending kind of almost helps you make this happen, because you get to, when something is airbend, you can recast it for 2. That's 1 spell, and then you just sort of have to pay 1 other thing to get this effect going off, and that's kind of cool. So very fun card. It has an alternate art. It's a borderless double-faced saga, so full art here on both sides. Really beautiful card. This whole cycle looks amazing in full art. I know a lot of Avatar fans are after this full group of cards, especially the 4 past Avatars, Yang Chen, Kyoshi, Karuk, and Roku, and probably Getzozen as well, of course. But yeah, super cool card. Hopefully not too expensive when the secondary market kind of settles down. But next, we have Master Pian Dao. 4 and a white for a 4/4 legendary creature, human warrior ally with first strike. When he enters, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can reveal an ally, equipment, or lesson. Put it into your hand, and the rest onto the bottom of your library. So because he is a member of the Order of the White Lotus, he's like an old master. A lot of these characters tend to relate to lessons. They all deal with lessons in some way. Some of them deal with sagas, like I think Guru Patik and stuff like that, shrines. But Pian Dao instead deals with lessons and equipment, because of course he's the sword master, so of course he wants you to find equipments and weapons, and then also allies, because Allies is also an Order of the White Lotus theming sort of stuff going on in the set as well. So very fun card, makes sense. The first strike is kind of the way they depict him being a master swordsman, and then he gets you something else whenever he attacks. That's quite nice. Cool card for Piandao. Next is Momo Friendly Flyer. 1 mana for a 1/1 Lemur Bat ally with flying. The first non-lemur creature spell with flying you cast during each of your turns costs 1 less to cast. Whenever another creature you control with flying enters, Momo gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So, the wording of the middle effect is a little bit weird because you're like, why does it specify non-lemur? That's a weird restriction, but then you realize that actually when you fully analyze what that means, it's trying to remove a restriction that you could have in a specific circumstance. The turn you play Momo, he is the first creature you cast that turn. So by them specifying the first non-lemur with flying, it means that the turn you play Momo, you can still gain the benefit of his effect. And the next flyer that you cast that turn is reduced. Now, this doesn't particularly matter on the turns after you've played Momo Friendly Flyer, but it does mean that he can't actually lower the cost of lemurs with flying, though it should be noted that in the main set, the 2 Momos both cost 1 white mana. You can't reduce that cost, because it only reduces the generic cost, not the color cost. There is a higher cost Momo in the Jumpstart set, and that's kind of the only card that's really like restricted in a way from it. So that's just the way that that works. The effect is just that it lowers the costs of creatures with flying, basically. And then when they enter, Momo gets bigger. You're not going to make him too big because I don't think you're going to be able to cast that many flying creatures. But for 1 mana, it's actually doing quite a lot. So you get why it is a rare. There are 2 alternate arts for this Momo. The first one is the Field Note Momo card, kind of like the Appa. So that is available, play and collector boosters. And then there is this alternate art. It's a foil, and you get this from the bundle. As you can see, it says it on the bottom. This is the standard bundle, not the commander bundle. So the Firelord Ozai bundle with the 9 packs. This is the promo card in that one. So you can get it there, or just buy it on the secondary market. I think it's a very cool art. Next, Momo Playful Pet is 1 mana for a 1/1 Lemur Bat ally. Flying and Vigilance. When he leaves the battlefield, choose 1. You get to either create a food token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, or scry 2. So lots of options there. The food token is just kind of like the clue token. Same kind of cost. Pay 2, tap sacrifice, you gain 3 life. That's cool. And yeah, you get options, and then especially the wording there, when Momo leaves the battlefield, they're leaving the opening there for the idea of you might want to airbend Momo, and when Momo is airbent, you can bring him back, but when he leaves, when he's airbent, you do get the effect, and you can kind of potentially repeat it if you really, really want to. So, nice card, actually a pretty good uncommon here. Next is Path to Redemption. 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. You enchant a creature, it can't attack or block. Then later on, you get to pay 5, sacrifice this aura, and exile the enchanted creature, and you get to create a 1/1 white ally creature token. And you can only activate that during your turn. So the idea is you enchant one of your opponent's creatures, and they are temporarily out of action because they're going on their path to redemption. They can still do other stuff, they just can't participate in combat. Then later, you get to fully get rid of them as a kind of villainous entity by exiling them from the board, and they come back on your board. They've swapped sides, and they're back as a 1/1 white ally creature token because they're on the good side of things. Very flavorful card. It is a way to remove a creature for only 2 mana. It's maybe a little bit slow, but it gets you there if this is some of the only removal you have in your deck. So worth noting for sure. One other quick note about this card is that I do actually appreciate that with a redemption card, they went for Iroh and not the obvious Zuko. So Iroh has that kind of redemption arc of like he used to be the Fire Nation general who laid siege to Ba Sing Se, and then in the end he takes back Ba Sing Se for the Earth Kingdom. It's really nice. But anyway, we move on. Rabaru Troop is 3 white for a common Rabbit Kangaroo. It's a 3/5 with landfall. So whenever a land you control enters, it gains flying until end of turn, and you gain 1 life. So realistically, you should be playing a land almost every turn. Maybe you're getting towards the end of the game. This maybe doesn't happen as often, but it's still pretty nice overall. But it also has plane cycling too, which just helps you for, I guess, early on in the game if you're struggling with your lands, especially in multicolor decks. You might just want to, oh, this is too much to cast. I'll pay 2, discard Rabaru Troop to get a planes from my deck. That's helpful. This is a cycle of cards. There's one of these animals for each of the colors that allows you to get forest cycling and so on. Pretty nice. Next is Razor Rings, which is 2 mana, so 1 and a white for an instant. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and you gain life equal to the excess damage dealt this way. So it's kind of cool. It kind of gives you a slight benefit if you want to kill something very, very small. But realistically, you probably just want to hit the biggest thing you can so that combat goes in your favor. But I really like the art. This is one of Katara's coolest and most powerful, I think, waterbending attacks, where she just starts slicing apart Hugh's swamp monster, demonstrating just how skilled she is at this point in time, able to defeat a kind of master swamp bender, which is pretty cool. Next, Sandbender Storm, 4 mana for a choose 1 instant, so you get to either destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, so something pretty big, or Earthbend 3, which is cool to see in white, which I guess they're maybe going for a little bit of the idea of like, oh yeah, well, Sandbenders, it's maybe feels kind of airbending-esque, so here's a white earthbend kind of card. So yeah, earthbending, this is the first time we probably see it on a card. Target land you control becomes a 0/0 creature with haste. That's still a land. And then because it's earthbend 3, you put 3+1/+1 counters on it. But when it dies, it just returns as a normal land, but it's tapped. So they just wanted you to get the value out of, and the fun out of animating your lands and making them creatures without the fear of, oh, imagine you started losing your lands in combat and you just couldn't get them back. You just lose the game immediately. So they found the right way to do this with the rulings on Earthbend, which is very, very cool. So cool, flexible card here. Next is South Pole Voyager. So it's 2 mana for a 2/2 human scout ally. It is a rare. And I think the fact that it is a rare, the effect that it has, and the visuals, this is meant to be Bato. Bato of the Water Tribe. You can see the bandages on the arm here. That's clearly who this is meant to be. Whenever this creature or another ally you control enters, you gain 1 life. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card. So it's just really cool, wanting you to play multiple allies, gaining little bits of life, and then if you get the second one, you do get to draw a card. Nice little kind of engine card that just feels like it's very easy to achieve. This, you know, Avatar Enthusiasts also gets the +1/+1 counters when an ally enters, and then we saw a few cards that come in with a token. So there's 2 triggers like immediately that will trigger South Pole Voyager, Bato. Very cool, and he has an extended art as well, which again is only from collector boosters. Next is the Southern Air Temple, our first shrine. So it's 4 mana for a legendary enchantment shrine. It's an uncommon. When it enters, you put X+1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of shrines. So it means if you just play the temple on its own, all your creatures get +1/+1. If you do have others, they get bigger, and then as more shrines come onto the field, you get more counters. That's sort of the idea. So it works on its own, or if you want to play into the shrine strategy, but I think the shrines is more of a proper constructed strategy. I'm not sure how much, like in draft, you're maybe going to be able to go crazy with the shrines, because they are all uncommons, I think, but it's still very cool. Love the art for the Southern Air Temple here. Very, very nice. Next, Suki, Courageous Rescuer. 1 white for a rare. It's a 2/4 human warrior ally. Other creatures you control get +1/+0. Whenever another permanent you control leaves the battlefield during your turn, you create a 1/1 white ally creature token, and this ability triggers only once each turn. So you can't go crazy getting tons and tons of tokens from this effect, but it is cool because the tokens come in, they get the benefit of Suki's other abilities, so they're 2/1 tokens. And then again, remember that one way to trigger the effect is to airbend one of your own things, which you kind of want to do in white in certain areas, so that's a kind of way to do that without just losing something because it dies. So cool. This is your end of series. Suki, obviously this is her as she returns from her apparent death. You know, wrangling the damaged ship to save Sokka and Toph. Very cool moment. I'm glad that they gave Suki another card. Like, this was revealed after her other card, the Kyoshi Warrior card, but still, really fun one here. And you can see that a lot of the legendary creatures that have the bigger effects in white, they all do kind of work together to create that, like, allied army against the Fire Nation kind of type dynamic of, like, making your soldiers kind of big, lots of tokens. It's kind of cool. She also has an extended art, only from collector boosters, which is nice. Team Avatar is up next. It is 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So that's kind of cool there. You attack with 1, they get the benefit of the others being there, even if they're not attacking themselves. Or pay 2 and a white and discard this card from your hand to deal damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature. So it's a flexible card. Like, it almost like works as like a sorcery, with that secondary effect to just hit something hard, or you can keep it on board and continue to attack with a big thing supported by your other things each turn. Cool card. Love the art depicting, it's not the full Team Avatar, but you know, it's like the book 2 Team Avatar that's kind of getting across here. So fun, nice art. Next is United Front. This is a mythic rare sorcery. So it's X, white. Create X 1/1 white ally creature tokens, then put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So you want to probably use this later on in the game as your finisher. Like, drop this and, you know, you pay X as 7 or something like that, and you drop a bunch of ally tokens on the board, boost them by +1/+1. So that's a lot. That's actually 2 tokens. Let's say you have the Suki on board, they're increased by 1. You know, all of these would trigger Avatar Enthusiast. You would at least get how does the wait, let me actually find the Botto card again. If this is the yeah, that would only trigger once, even if you continuously put groups of 2 on the board. So yeah, that is what it is. But still, you trigger a bunch of those other effects at this point in the game. It's a cool card. Hakoda leading the invasion force. Super cool. This one has a really nice alternate art. This is a battle pose card. You can get this from play boosters in foil and non-foil, as well as collector boosters, because it's not a neon ink battle pose card. It's just a normal battle pose card. Love this one here. Water tribe symbol. It's the Southern Water Tribe kind of warriors here charging in. Nice card. Love the art. Next, Vengeful Villagers is 3 and a white for a human citizen. Note, it is not an ally. It is a 3/3. Whenever this creature attacks, choose target creature an opponent controls, tap it. Then you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. If you do, put a stun counter on the chosen creature. So you have a choice here. If you just attack, you get to tap. If you want to put the stun counter on, then you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. And the idea there is that tapping it is still good. That clears the way for your attacks that turn. But if you want to really get that creature out of the way with the stun counter, where like it's going to take like 2 turns for it to become active again, yeah, sacrifice a creature, which can be, for instance, like an ally token or something like that. It could be a clue token. It can be a food token if you've made one. There's lots of options to not pay too much of a price with the sacrifice cost there. But you can see that this is one of the examples of one of the white cards that's meant to lean into the white-black sacrifice theming. Like, there's a really clear sense of, like, the white-blue theming is flyers. This is one of the few cards that properly leans into the maybe black cards, because it's, you know, it's Mare Tong, it's Chin Village. It's actually a really nice depiction here of this scene from Avatar Day. Sokka and Katara over here. Aang as Kyoshi. It's pretty nice. But anyway, we'll move on. Water Tribe Captain, 2 and a white for a 3/3. It's a common human soldier ally with a activated ability for 5 mana. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Relatively high cost there, but it is a nice boost, and especially if you have a really wide board, this could actually be quite good. But it is just a common. I think there are better cards than this. But the art on this one is actually quite nice, because this is another example of like them kind of showing us another one of these, I guess, leaders of the Water Tribe forces during like the invasion, a character that we didn't really see in the show, but the implication that there was a bigger force than just the one we focused on, that's nice to see. So pretty nice. Maybe one that works more with maybe the red-white deck, where you can use firebending to get that effect across a little bit better with the mana you generate there. On a similar kind of theme, we have this card, Water Tribe Ralliers, 2 mana for a 2/2. These are female waterbenders here who I guess join the kind of invasion force after the inspiration from Katara after book 1. Again, stuff that we didn't overly see, but was implied to maybe be happening in the background. That's the kind of cool, like, extra stuff you get from having so many cards to fill out. Human Soldier Ally, Waterbend 5, another waterbending effect in white. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 3 or less from among them, put it into your hand, and the rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, yeah, you can pay for this again with your creatures or artifacts because it's a water bending cost, and you can bring that down, and you can potentially get a kind of low power creature from your deck to your hand. It's nice. On an uncommon, it's nice to have something like that. And then especially if you lean into, if you have the Yagoda card, the one that benefits from tapping, and some other stuff, especially if this is maybe a blue-white deck, you can do more stuff with that. That's actually, I think, pretty solid, if not, like, amazing. And then our last card for this video is Yip Yip. So it's an instant lesson for 1 mana. It's a common. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And if that creature is an ally, it also gains flying. Now again, you can build your deck so that basically everything is an ally, so that happens every single time. And yeah, +2/+2 and flying until end of turn is actually a pretty good combat trick. It's also a lesson which benefits other cards. That's pretty good for 1, I have to say. So white overall looks pretty nice. My only avatar aspect criticism will again be that I think it would have benefited from having a Monkey Atso card, so you have a little bit more creature variety for airbenders, and I don't think that would have affected too much overall. Otherwise, I think there's a nice variety in just the kind of monocolor cards here. Of course, we still have a few hybrid cards we'll get to in the multicolor section that kind of relate to just white on its own. For instance, like that's where the single color Sokka basically is in the hybrid blue-white Sokka and so on. But still, yeah, it's a nice grouping of cards, I think, overall. White is a color I tend to gravitate towards in Magic, so I'm looking forward to actually playing with some of these cards. And that strategy of just, yeah, make your tokens, make them bigger, kind of boost them with the white style kind of combat effects, and then you have little bits of aspects of, okay, you're going for flying and airbending, little bits of water bending. It's kind of nice what it's overall covering here. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the 3 colorless cards I covered here, and then white in the main set. But I think next video we'll be moving on to blue. But let me know what you think here. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.